Hey everyone, welcome to The Explainer. We're going to skip the usual preamble today and just dive straight into a massive, brain-teasing mystery. Seriously, we're exploring how 5 completely different things, biology, street food, rock and roll, and silicone chips, all share this one revolutionary thread. Get ready because the connections we're about to uncover are absolutely going to change the way you think about innovation, scale, and honestly, just the chaotic beauty of a simple idea.
Okay, let's dive into this. What on earth connects a feral British tree growing wildly on the side of a road, a Bangladeshi street vendor hustling in New York City, rock legend Paul McCartney, and tech visionary Steve Jobs? I know, it sounds like an impossible riddle, right? But the answer actually lies in one simple, familiar, everyday word. And that word is apple. But as we'll see, an apple is literally never just an apple.
To understand why, we've got to look at the biology. The apple operates on this biological principle called extreme heterozygosity. Now, what this means is absolutely mind-blowing. The apple genome is actually larger than the human genome. So every single time an apple seed is planted, it produces a completely unique, brand new variety of fruit. It literally doesn't matter if you plant seeds from the exact same tree. The results are going to be entirely unpredictable. When somebody tosses an apple core out of a car window, they're unwittingly planting the possibility of an entirely new, wild creation. How crazy is that?
And this wild unpredictability actually inspired a project in Britain to track down feral roadside apple trees. A team started what they call a wilding mother orchard. They were discovering trees thriving in the most crazy, diverse locations, places where you wouldn't expect them to survive, let alone thrive. And because they mapped these trees using coordinates, the apples are given these fantastic, completely accidental, poetic names. Just listen to these: horseshish gossip, bats prefer flame, and autumn mushroom spoke. I mean, wow. Each one of these is unique, unmanufactured testament to the wild nature of the apple. Every single seed tells a unique story of its environment and its resilience.
Okay, let's switch gears a bit and pivot to the human element. The biological apple has also become a literal seed of opportunity for survival in urban jungles. In New York City, the contrast is stark. You've got neighborhoods classified as food deserts, areas severely lacking fresh produce, which often double as food swamps, meaning they're completely saturated with fast food ads and restaurants. Enter the NYC Green Cart Initiative. This was a program that deployed 500 street carts to sell fresh fruits and veggies in these exact neighborhoods. And the absolute star of the cart, the literal apple.
This initiative became a total lifeline for newly arrived immigrants. In a documentary chronicling these vendors, people like Barda from Mexico and Shaheen from Bangladesh shared how they came to the US with these grand illusions. Stories of money literally growing on trees. But what they found instead was the hard grit of New York City. Yet, by pushing these apple carts, they were able to plant their own seeds of opportunity. They relied on the literal apple to survive, to build micro-businesses, and to carve out a living in a totally new world. It's that exact same wild unpredictability of the apple seed, just translated into human hustle.
So, from the survival of the streets, we transition seamlessly into the realm of art and music. Back in the late 1960s, the biggest band in the world, the Beatles, needed a space that matched their desire for creative freedom. And they didn't choose some sterile corporate name for their new multimedia company and recording studio. Nope, they chose Apple. Apple Studios in 1969 was explicitly designed to be the ultimate environment for messy, brilliant, unconstrained innovation. It was a place where creative seeds could be planted and just allowed to grow wild.
Tracking their famous Get Back sessions, which were recently highlighted in Peter Jackson's documentary, perfectly captures how this environment worked. Look at this timeline. They started their rehearsals at Twickenham Studios, which was this cold, massive film stage where they felt totally unmotivated and super tense. But look at days 8 through 16, the exact moment they moved into the chaotic, vibrant, homemade environment of Apple Studios. Bam! A massive creative burst. That 21-day pressure cooker of an environment ultimately culminated in their legendary, completely unannounced rooftop concert.
For decades, the myth surrounding these sessions was all about toxic discord and bitter breakups. But Ringo Starr paints an entirely different picture. As he notes here, there were hours and hours of them just laughing and playing music. The Apple creative process wasn't about some rigid corporate structure. It was completely fueled by joyful, collaborative play. It was literally just a bunch of guys in a room, tinkering and experimenting until something entirely new and brilliant took shape.
Let's move to Silicon Valley and see how this builds, because this exact same spirit of wild, joyful creation transitioned right into the tech world. Just a few years later, in the mid-1970s, the garage tech revolution kicked off.
It all started with Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs building these blue boxes just to playfully hack the global phone system. From there, Wozniak started cobbling together rudimentary computer boards, basically just to show off to his nerdy friends at the local homebrew computer club. And finally, in a messy, cluttered garage, they built the Apple I. The whole thing was driven by a hacker, show-and-tell culture.
Steve Wozniak perfectly captured the scrappy, anti-corporate energy of that era. I mean, look at this quote. They weren't setting out to dominate the world. They were just doing it for fun. They fully expected to lose money, but they just wanted to be able to say, hey, we had a company. Much like that feral apple seed tossed out a car window, they threw an idea out into the world, a personal computer for regular people, with absolutely no way of predicting what it would grow into.
Well, grow it certainly did. Just look at these staggering numbers from 2019. By that time, those two guys in a garage who were just hoping to break even for fun had morphed into a global tech powerhouse with 137,000 employees and $260 billion in revenue. That is massive. But here's the thing, that kind of scale introduces a huge problem. When you become this big, how on earth do you keep the spirit of the garage alive? How do you prevent that wild, creative, extreme heterozygosity of innovation from just being crushed by corporate bureaucracy? I mean, just take a look at Apple Park in Cupertino. The visual contrast between this gleaming, pristine, futuristic corporate architecture and that messy, pizza box-filled 1970s garage we were just talking about couldn't be starker. It really begs the question, how does a massive, multi-billion-dollar company actually tame the wildness of innovation without, killing it completely? Well, the secret lies in a pretty radical approach to how the entire company is structured.
It all comes down to a functional organization versus a conventional structure. Back in 1997, when Steve Jobs returned to Apple, he did something completely unprecedented. In a single day, he fired all the general managers of the business units. All of them. He believed that having general managers constantly chasing short-term profit and loss margins was stifling innovation. So instead, he instituted a functional structure where experts lead experts. Hardware experts manage hardware. Software experts manage software. This totally insulates the product teams from short-term financial pressures. For instance, when Apple developed the iPhone 7's portrait mode, that was an enormous, incredibly expensive technical bet made by a camera expert named Paul Hubel, not some spreadsheet-driven manager.
And this extreme attention to detail perfectly illustrates the result of that expert-led structure. Because leaders are actually experts in their fields, they're expected to immerse themselves in the details literally 3 levels down. Apple leaders insist on these continuous curves on their hardware, a shape known in the design community as a squircle, specifically to soften light reflections. Now, general manager, they wouldn't care about a squircle, but a design expert absolutely does, and it demands that operations leaders commit to extremely precise manufacturing tolerances.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how they maintain all of this without burning out. To prevent these expert leaders from crashing as the company scales, Apple's VP of Applications, Roger Rosner, helped codify the discretionary leadership model. It's brilliant. Leaders purposefully divide their time into 4 buckets. Owning is where they apply deep core expertise. But since tech evolves so fast, they must spend time learning critical new skills, basically adopting a beginner's mindset. Then there's teaching, which means guiding teams through passionate critiques, not just drawing on a whiteboard. And finally, delegating all the tasks outside their expertise. This framework is exactly how Apple organizes its leaders to handle massive scale without losing that initial garage innovation.
So we bring it all full circle, from the biology of a feral roadside tree to the gritty survival tactics of a New York City street vendor, from the joyful, chaotic music sessions of the Beatles to a scrappy Silicon Valley garage, and finally, to the highly structured, expert-led megacampus of the world's biggest tech company. The ultimate through-line here is the phenomenal power of putting a wildly unpredictable idea into the world, and then fiercely protecting the environment it needs to actually grow. So, I'll leave you with this final thought. If every seed produces a completely unique variety, what kind of apple are you planting today? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. And hey, I hope this sparks some wild innovation in your own work. See you next time.